We got a bidet!
Hey everybody, and welcome back for another video. In today's Shoot the Sheev podcast, I actually took Sarah down quite the rabbit hole. She does not know, well, she didn't know about the Star Wars Clone Wars, like the original Clone Wars, which is what we got behind us today for our backgrounds. It's very interesting because this was the first original Clone Wars before the Clone Wars we got that we all kind of know today, the one that looks like Pixar almost.
Which I
And
have not seen either.
yeah, she has not seen the movie or the show because there is a movie that kicks off the show. Yeah, so just to give you some background information on the show that we watched, because really what it was is it was a show initially, and then they just, put them all together to make a movie, so to speak. I believe you looked up the year this came out. Do you remember what you had said? Was it 2003?
Yeah, on Disney Plus, I'm pretty sure it said 2003.
So about 2003, I think that was the year after Attack of the Clones, because I think that was 2002. So this was kind of the first part or section of Star Wars content material that George Lucas had made to kind of, keep us going with being excited about Star Wars and seeing where we're heading. And we kind of knew that this was taking place between episode 2 and episode 3. So we kind of got this while episode 3 was being made. And what this was is it was a bunch of 5-minute clips. So you would get a very, very short episode. You typically, I think it was like you'd have a normal show on Cartoon Network, and then they'd save like 5 minutes at the end, like maybe cutting out commercials or something to make it fit. And they would put in the Star Wars Clone Wars mini episode at the very end before the next show was starting. Or sometimes on the flip side, they could put the Star Wars one first and then play the normal aired show. But basically, we got 5-minute episodes of different things that were going on. Usually, it was 5 minutes worth of something where you could have something going on, and whatever it was would, at least the small segment would wrap up in its 5 minutes. There was a lot of segments in this show where it was just like a 5-minute one-shot type episode of just showing some sort of mini battle on a planet with a hero that we know. So, for instance, they had ones with Mace Windu. They had one with Kit Fisto. They had something going on Ilum where Master Luminara had her apprentice, and they were trying to build a lightsaber together, and then there's something that happened. There is an overarching story happening too, between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and then also Dooku and Ventress, which this was the first time we ever saw Ventress. A lot of you know Ventress from the Clone Wars show we have now, but this is actually where she was introduced. So kind of what we had going on for Anakin and Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan and Anakin were sent to a planet to try to help retake it. The Separatists had taken over a major city in the Clone Wars, and so they were tasked to go get it back. And so Anakin was in control of the fleet above the planet, and then Obi-Wan went down to the surface and had to take a bunch of clones to try to take the city. And then eventually what happens as they're doing this stuff, we get the introduction of a character called Dirge, which is a bounty hunter that Count Dooku hired to try to help out things within the Clone Wars. He's a very interesting character. He is a bounty hunter, has a ton of different weapons in his arsenal. But kind of the thing in the show that we got to see that was really exciting about him was that he was kind of regenerative with limitations. So like his arm, if it got chopped off, the like veins and tendons or whatever would like re-wrap themselves together so he could be uh put back together. Whereas with his demise in the end, where he like exploded, uh he couldn't be put back together from that. So we get a really cool character with Dirge. Um, we get to see Sarah seemed a little excited about it, but maybe I was misreading. When they were doing like major jousting, like there was a whole bunch of clones that were guided by Obi-Wan on speeder bikes. There was a whole bunch of IG looking droids with Dirge, and then they just kind of clashed, and we got this huge battle between them in jousting style where they were, you know, hitting each other with their pikes and whatnot. Kind of thinking about the Dooku and the Ventress stuff. So Ventress kind of went through like a tryout period of trying to earn the respect of Count Dooku by like murdering all these people in an arena, and then Dooku kind of showed her like, you think you know the dark side, and like slaps her silly kind of with the dark side of the Force, and she realizes that she's not as powerful as she is, but they still want to use her to their advantage. So she ends up joining Dooku and Darth Sidious, and her first assignment is to draw out Anakin and defeat him. Well, we know which one of them ends up living in the long run, but what we kind of got out of it, if you think about Sidious and why he's sending all these people to take out Anakin, it's because he wants to keep testing Anakin. He wants to see, is this person the one that is going to be the best fit to help me when I overthrow the Jedi? So he's like throwing all these different tests at him. And this one, Anakin disobeyed orders to stay away from Ventress, and also, even though he won the battle, tapped into that dark side a little bit. And we got like interesting flashes of his different mentors, in my opinion, being very disappointed in what he was doing. So that's kind of the gist of what we got with this first volume, or season as you want to call it. There are 2 seasons. We'll talk about the second one on a separate Shoot the Sheev podcast, but this one is talking about this one for now. The last major piece that came out of this show is we got to see General Grievous for the very first time. Just to kind of see your response to it, Sarah, how did you feel about seeing Grievous in this show as opposed to what you saw, from the films?
He seemed a lot taller. Was kind of the big takeaway, I guess, and his feet were more claw-like because he was hanging from the ceiling in some spots instead of having and then in the movie it seems like he has more regular feet, like robotic feet, if you will, like what the rest of the clones have or the droids have, as opposed to like weird claw feet, like bird feet almost.
He still has fairly claw-like feet in the movie. We don't see his feet very much.
I don't think he really talked yet, has he?
He did. He had a very, very like raspy type droid voice in the show, whereas when we see him in the movie, it's a bit different.
One of the things that I was looking up just now that I thought was really interesting. So the way that this show came out was season 1 of these shorts was in 2003. It was 10 4-minute episodes. I didn't look at every single episode to check, but it looks like they're mostly 4 minutes.
4 or 5, whatever.
Just bear with me here. Season 2 of this show came out in 2004. And that was also 10 episodes, 4 minutes each, except for the last one, which was 8 minutes. And that is as far as we are in our 1 hour and like 8 minutes, or 1 hour and 7 minutes, however long this one episode is that we saw. We've seen seasons 1 and 2 of those shorts.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, so then it must be volume 1 is what this is considered.
Season 3 is only 5 episodes that are about 4 or 5 minutes each. Again, I didn't check the runtime of each one of them, but
interesting.
Season 3 is only 5 episodes.
So we'll call them volumes then, because I know on the DVDs they're called volumes. Volume one covers what we saw, which is the first, I think you said 10 episodes.
Season 1 is 10 episodes. Season 2 is 10 episodes. Season 3 is 5 episodes. And it looks like season 3, they're all about 13 minutes instead of the 4 minutes each.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that. What I do
According
know,
to Google and IMDb.
what I do know is that there is volume one and volume two on DVD, and volume one and volume two is on Disney Plus. So just kind of go along with that for now. I'm very curious to look more into it, as you said. A couple other things going on with this show. It did have its merchandise, which was really cool. I didn't, as a kid, I didn't buy any of them, and I didn't like get any of them as like gifts from people, either fun things, from your parents and stuff like that. I don't know why. I didn't really gravitate to them as much as I did the ones that look like the real people, like from the movies, live action. But they were very cool. I will say the packaging fit the animation very well. Uh, I bet you, now that you've seen this first season, Sarah, when we go to toy shows, you'll probably see the action figures like instantly. You're gonna see it and be like, "Oh, that's what that is." So I never really bought any of the toys for this Clone Wars stuff.
Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, I mean, like they were still this style. It was kind of like having, because the show is 2D animation, so it's really weird that you saw like a 3D sculpture of the characters. Um, so that was kind of one of the weird things about it. But at the same time, looking back on it as an adult, I'm sure it's perfectly fine. I think they're really cool now, and it'd be really neat to have them all, but you know you can only collect so much stuff. Um, so yeah, what we'll do now is right after the break, we'll come back and we'll talk about some tough love with this show. So stick around. Have you seen The Mandalorian? Do you wonder what Operation Cinder was that they mentioned in this show? Well, we got you covered because we have an entire playlist dedicated to the Star Wars Battlefront 2 campaign, which highlights Operation Cinder. So if you check out our playlist, you'll be able to see what actually happened with Operation Cinder and know what they're talking about with the show. Now back to ours. Welcome back, everybody. This is our segment here when we kind of look at shows or movies and we talk about some tough love that we have for them. For me, tough love is when I was a kid watching these. I was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 at the time ish. Not doing the real math right now, but I remember I could. It was hard for me as a kid to remember or locate when this show was running, because you got to remember during this time there was no on demand, so to speak. There wasn't streaming. It was, you got to be there or else you're gonna miss out, kind of a thing.
No DVR.
No, I mean you could tape it, which I'll get to that in a minute, but it's kind of beside the point for what I'm talking about. So yeah, you had to know when these things were coming out. You had to, be right there. You can't show up 5 minutes late because then the episode's over. So it was kind of hard to be able, at least for me as a kid in elementary school, to try to keep track of a kid's show. I had the basics down of, what I typically watched on like Cartoon Network or Disney Channel. And I was that kid that would save the TV guides every week so I could look up when my shows were on. Because I got tired of watching the scroll thing on channel 8 or 9, or channel 9. That's what it was. Because there'd be a live TV guide on TV where you kind of watched it roll through and then you saw it was on your channels. So it was very hard. It wasn't very accessible to, in my opinion, its target audience, which was, younger kids like myself. So I think that's probably my biggest tough love for it, is that although it was ambitious, I felt like it was kind of poorly handled. I do remember as a kid when all of them were out, there was this thing they did on TV, and I think it was called Toonami at the time for Cartoon Network. It was kind of like for adults, late night on Cartoon Network is called Adult Swim. For kids, it was called Toonami, and there was like this galactic dude that was controlling the TV and stuff. It was what it was. But they would they were running the 5-minute episodes all night, but the catch was is that it was how they were kind of releasing it in a way where you'd watch 5 minutes of an episode and you'd watch a completely other show for the next 20 minutes, and then you would see another 5-minute clip, and then you have to watch another show. And for me, because I didn't like all the shows that were on that channel, I'd have my tape in, and I was trying to record these at the time so I could, be able to watch these whenever I wanted to. If there's 10 episodes from the first volume, well, then, think about it, 10 30-minute sections, that's 5 hours of content. So, um, it was even hard to do that, especially late night for a young kid like me at the time. So, uh, thank goodness they eventually came out with DVDs, which we still do have. Um, but accessibility was a very, very tough challenge, in my opinion, for this show, as far as being able to watch it on TV. I'm sure there was ways that other people did with trying to do bootleg and stuff, but you know, granted how old I was, it was very tough. I can hardly keep track of when Pokemon was on, but
I think I saw this show was rated TV 7 or something like that. So ages 7 and up, which would be, the age you were at was above 7 when you were watching this stuff. So it's not even PG. So for you to have to try to figure all that stuff out on your own, and man, Jamie, you're really aging yourself there because that whole Channel 9, I think you said, where the stuff filters through, I didn't even know that existed. And I've never once looked at a paper TV guide.
yeah, some people used to collect TV guides too. But every week in the Sunday newspaper, there's a magazine of a TV guide, and it would have its own little story there on the cover of it, but the main substance of it was that, all the major TV channels would publish what they're going to have on TV for the week. And they would, if you were really lucky, they would even have the title of the episode so you kind of knew if you'd seen it or not. But yeah, there used to be the thing on Channel 9 where it would go through, and it was like it wasn't like a snow day where something would be on the TV and then it would be like a slideshow and flip to the next one. It was as if you were watching like the like credits at the end of a movie where it would just cycle upward, and you'd have to watch for what channel it was on the left side, and then it would say the shows on the right side in different times. And yeah, times are different. You'd also have like a little commercial playing in the upper right hand corner, uh, advertising whatever. If you go to the movie theater early enough and they have those different commercials about movies and stuff, that was the type of commercials you'd get there, or commercials for pay-per-view because they wanted you to, buy the pay-per-view.
I will say it's not that I've never watched public TV like that because I definitely have. Between The Price is Right and Bob Ross, I had my shows. Um, Back to this specific show or series or movie or whatever you wanna name it. In terms of tough love for me, there's a lot that's going on that it's kind of crazy and almost a little hard to follow just because there's so much action. And it's like a tough love, but also an I love it kind of thing at the same time. So I'm kind of doing both categories at once with this item here, I guess, is, you know, because I didn't watch these in 5 minute segments and I'm watching this all at once, it's almost a little overwhelming because it's very action driven.
Mhm.
But I can completely see where if you were watching these, week to week and you're having to wait a week in between each one, well, if they're only 4 or 5 minutes long and it's not that good and it's kind of boring, I'm not going to wait a whole nother week to watch the next episode. I'm just not going to watch it at all. So it makes total sense for these to be so wham bam action. Yeah, get them, battles and stuff. And um, I like it, but it's also a lot. It's a lot.
It is a
That makes
lot.
sense.
I think what's also kind of interesting with what you're saying with that is that, you know, these 5 minute episodes, 4 minute episodes, excuse me. As I learned today, they were 4 minutes. These 4 minute episodes, some of them do have an overarching, arc throughout the show. So sometimes it was kind of, when you're gonna go watch it, are you gonna see a 4 minute clip that's like a random one, like the Mace Windu thing or Kit Fistu, or are you gonna get something that's, about the story that you saw a while back, kind of a thing. So it may be even kind of hard to remember what was happening with the different episodes, just because of all the time in between and the different things that they focused on.
Is Kit Fistu the green guy with like the tentacle hair?
Yeah, the guy that was ripped, yeah, that guy. It was kind of funny to see that.
Yeah, there was at one point we saw him swimming underwater, and I'm gonna leave that for our next segment, talking about what we saw there that was kind of cool. But uh, seeing him swim underwater, you don't want to swim in a Jedi robe, so he takes his robe off and is apparently borderline shirtless, and he's got some muscles.
Oh, he was shirtless. He was basically in a loincloth kind of a thing, like a little bathing suit.
In terms of other tough love, um, some of the characters are a little weird looking, I'm gonna say. Palpatine had some serious bags under his eyes. I think I counted like 6 or 7 different little bags under his eyes, so that was pretty crazy. Some of these people look a little strange. Yoda's another one where I can't get over how he looks. I know it's very difficult. Yeah, I think
Oh,
I
there you
got
go.
him fine. Um, so he's on the back of my background if you want to take a look and see. But I know it's really difficult to take a puppet and turn it into a 2D picture that's animated. Um, but they didn't do him very much justice to his neck and jawline, and I'll kind of leave it at that. I think for as active as he is, that he doesn't look very active.
I think to kind of um, maybe give a little bit of liberty to what you're talking about. The art style is very different. They're not going for realism, so to speak. I mean, if you even look at Anakin and Obi-Wan and the pictures I got here, or the guy from the banking clan that was in like their species, they looked really funny and weird.
They
But
did look very strange. Have we seen them in live action?
yeah, they were in episode 2 very briefly for like 2 minutes.
I'll have to take a look at them again some other time.
But the animation is kind of like an exaggeration to a point of what they were or what they are. And so the fact that Palpatine is a really old guy, I'm probably sure that's probably why they did the bags under his eyes so much. And uh, Yoda, he's not a human per se, so maybe some of his features are a little bit different. I mean, his face is, kind of looking in the
All
movies
ballooned.
too. Yeah. So I'd say it's probably like that. Just an art style thing that's going on. Same thing like when we watched Tales of the Jedi and you were like, this isn't realistic at all. But
I
I was like,
struggled so hard with that show.
But I was like, but Sarah, it's the same animation style as the current Clone Wars. They're just following it. There is a thing that is called Star Wars animation. Like they are known for it. So, um, yeah, it's just the different types. There is a name. I think they credit the guy that drew the 2D animated. Like they call it that dude's last name and then animation for this one. I do have the IMDb thing pulled up. Maybe I can find his name. I do
While you're
not.
looking that up, one note that I have about this show that's just kind of something odd, if you will, is there is not very much dialogue. There's, so we've seen about 24-minute clips pieced together into a one like an hour and 10-minute episode, if you will. So um I would say of those like 20 little segments, maybe four or five of probably about five or six of them have any actual dialogue, whereas most of the rest of them is either action shots, fighting, or maybe there's say two or three of them where Yoda's kind of giving like a narration at the very beginning of that little scene of what's going on, or like an update in the battle. Um, it's it, it kind of makes sense, but it's also strange to have such long, quiet segments. And there's noises, like blasters and lightsabers and stuff like that, but to not have dialogue for that extended amount of time, it's something that's very interesting that I'm not very used to.
How do you think the animation compared to the holiday special animation?
I think it's actually pretty similar. The holiday special, that was something I was thinking of mentioning at some point here too. I don't think we really have any repeat characters between that and here, at least not that I've noticed yet. Because in that one, you've got Luke and Han and Chewie and well, I guess C3PO. We've seen that in both this one and that one, and R2. They're very similar styles. I wouldn't call them exact carbon copies. I feel like C3PO, I remember him being a little bit different, but they're pretty similar.
I Ooh, I don't know if I'm finding the exact um thing that I'm supposed to be finding it. I don't know. I can't find the person's name. There's like a lot of names floating around, and I don't want to say the wrong one. So
Gotcha.
I would just say if you look at the animation style, it is very popular for what it was. Um, but yeah, so that was kind of our little tough love segment of the volume one of this show. And then after we come back, we're going to talk about some of the things we liked about this show. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what it's like to grow up during the prequel era? Do you wonder what type of merchandise was around then? How different was it than it is now? Check out our videos on this channel where we talk about the merchandise of The Phantom Menace and the merchandise of Attack of the Clones. They are here on this channel. The Phantom Menace is my first video ever on YouTube, so there's a special place in my heart for that one. So please, if any, check that out. Now back to our show. Welcome back. We are here for what we really liked about the Volume 1 of Star Wars The Clone Wars, the original Star Wars The Clone Wars. Only the OGs know. Sarah briefly mentioned something that she really liked about this show, and we're going to get a little reminder here. So, what did you mention before that you really liked about this show?
Yeah, so one of the things that I found pretty crazy and interesting that I liked was just how much action there is. I feel like in the other shows that we've been reviewing lately, a lot of times that's one of the things I default to is the action level and the intensity level of the episode kind of almost determines how much I enjoy it, with more action being more enjoyable, right? So with this one, with them kind of being like little 4 minute or clips, that are all kind of piecemealed together. So when they were originally released, a way to keep viewers was to keep up that action and intensity level because it makes you want to watch the next episode, right? Which is kind of what I'm saying with the TV shows that are coming out nowadays. But with us watching it now, and they're all pieced into one giant episode that's just over an hour long, it's a lot of action and a lot of intensity, and there's not much of a break in between, all of these battles. And so there's so much going on, and it is kind of crazy and a little bit hard to follow. But it's you can keep up with it for the most part. And the fact that there's not really boring parts in this makes it a lot more enjoyable, I think. It kind of makes it hard to keep your eyes off of what's going on just because you have to pay attention.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot going on, and like you said, um, it's hard to look away. Otherwise, you're gonna miss something. Uh, one
And
thing,
it's not just the same two people battling over and over in different places and stuff and like, chasing each other and battling each other. There's a lot of different battles that are happening with this between, you've got Anakin doing the pilot fighting, the dog fighting, right? You've got Obi-Wan fighting on the ground against the droids. You've got different clones versus droid battles. You've got the whole Ventress battle with two battles. Yes, you're right.
I'm counting the ones that we're talking about. So you said,
Oh, okay.
Anakin in the sky. We got
Yep.
Obi-Wan on the ground. Um,
Yep.
just thinking about kind of the Clone Wars part of it, you could say, the Kit Fistu when he was underwater. Um,
Yep.
there was Mace Windu when he was fighting on his own. Uh,
Ventress and Dooku, Ventress and Anakin.
I would count Ventress and Anakin. I'm trying to count the stuff that's the actual Clone Wars battles.
Okay.
Because Ventress and Dooku, that was her basically trying out to be a part of the Sith. But I mean, they did have a lightsaber battle in there. Um, but I
There's a lot
guess
going on.
what I'm trying to get across is, and something we kind of talked about a little bit before we watched this show, or maybe during whatever, is that, George Lucas, he wasn't going to delay Revenge of the Sith just so that we could get a better picture painted for the Clone Wars. He was like, yo, I got 3 years until episode 3 comes out. So I need something in between here to kind of paint the picture a little bit more of what's going on with the Clone Wars, because episode 2 starts the Clone Wars and episode 3 ends the Clone Wars. So we have to have something in between that shows a little bit more of what it was. And so this is kind of like the best thing that we got to be able to do that. So they cram a lot of battles in here to make it look like a bigger scale than what we kind of imagined. If they were to do season 1 just with one battle, but it's taking the whole time to complete it, well, that doesn't really give us a big scale. That gives us maybe 2 or 3 planets were involved and then it was over with, when really it was a galactic thing and there was a whole bunch of planets involved. So I think the basically one-off episodes that we got, which are not filler, that's why I'm calling them one-off, is it's kind of like a one-off adventure in D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, where we see like the Kit Fistu thing where they do the underwater battle and we see all that stuff going on, or we see Mace Windu and doing all his stuff going on. We're getting little bits and pieces of the different things happening in the galaxy, for different aspects of the Clone Wars going on. So it was a show that accomplished a pretty big scale with such a small runtime. Like, this is, give or take a couple minutes, this is basically the length of a Mandalorian the longest Mandalorian episode. So put that into perspective, you know?
One of the things you mentioned when you're talking about the different things that was going on that reminded me like an oh yeah, I remember I wanted to mention that was Kit Fistu fighting underwater with his lightsaber. So that I thought was pretty neat too to see what does a lightsaber look like underwater and how does it react? And one of the crazy things that he does with that thing was rip a underwater ship or submarine, if you will, in half with his lightsaber. It's one of those things of like, it seems impossible because the ship is gigantic, but the way the perspective is of the shot, it looks small enough that he actually could have done it. And somehow he did because the ship's in two pieces afterwards. But it's just one of those crazy things of like, holy cow, did that just happen?
Yeah, I think the closest thing we ever got for live action was like when Rey did the backflip over Kylo Ren's ship and cut one of the wings off. Um, I thought where you were going with that was like when he's underwater and you look at his lightsaber, it almost looks like Kylo Ren's lightsaber, how it kind of looks like unstable because light refracts, is that the word? Underwater. So it makes his lightsaber look a little different than when he's on land, so to speak. Um,
Yeah.
which is neat because, like you said, you know, what does a lightsaber do underwater? And they're like, I got you, cuz we're gonna show you. So yeah, that was cool.
What's something that you would say is one of the things you really liked about this?
There is a very, very small, like, of course, a lot of these things are very small just because of the nature of the show. But one of the cool things that they really kind of showed us in one of the episodes was, you know, how does a clone commander like, command his troops and, you know, maneuver them and do like these squad based maneuvers and whatnot. Like there's we talk about the holiday special, how it opened up with all the Wookiees just roaring. We don't really know what they're saying. We just have to kind of make it up. But during this whole section of the episode with the clones, you know, we see them, you know, doing all these hand motions and we can understand everything that they're saying and what they're doing without them even speaking. And I thought it was really cool to see the different maneuvers that they were communicating without having to talk. And so we kind of really got to see uh, a lot more of what the clones are able to do because, you know, obviously we see the clones in episode 2, but we don't really get to see some nitty gritty battles with them. We just see very big scale type battles between episode 2 and episode 3. And here it was like a little squad that was supposed to be kind of like the Navy SEALs, so to speak, of the clones, and they were infiltrating different parts of the city. So it was kind of cool to see that in motion.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting that you bring that specific scene up too, because that's kind of just another thing to prove my point of how a lot of these episodes don't even have dialogue because, you know, in that scene, it's kind of the point of the scene is that you're not supposed to talk while that stuff's going on.
Yeah. Probably another cool thing was seeing Ventress brought into the show. Uh, like I said before this show, she was not a thing. You know, she was a part of this show before she was a part of the Clone Wars that we have today, which was very interesting because at the end of this volume, we're kind of led to believe that she died, like she fell to her death. But then when they basically redid the Clone Wars, when they had more time to flush it out more, um, they brought her back. Mm, I don't, I don't recall in the Clone Wars if they actually killed her off or not, or if she just kind of went off and did her own thing. But I don't think that this show is considered canon just because of some of the ways that different things went down. Um, but they do explain quite a bit of stuff. Like it almost seems like some of the things could be canon and some of them aren't. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like pick and choose. Uh, I
Well,
haven't.
it's kind of like today's TV shows, you know, when they're trying to reimagine, say, a book or a video game, but in a TV show form. A
Last
lot
of
of
Us.
it a lot of it is based on the original content, but sometimes they make some changes along the way to kind of tweak some things here or there just to, attempt to better the story.
Right. I thought it was really cool when Anakin was commanding the people in space and they're doing the space battles, all the cool maneuvers that he did.
That
So
was pretty sweet.
I was thinking to myself, like, this is really over the top with how many torpedoes are being launched and how fast they're flying. It was just like, whoa, because we've been talking about, these episodes are kind of, a bit above and beyond. But then, you think about it, and in episode 4 of the movies, Ben Kenobi tells Luke that his dad was the greatest starfighter pilot in the galaxy. And they're kind of showing that off here, like just showing all the different crazy things that he could do, uh, and still, just be a pilot, so to speak. I don't know where I was going with that, but basically they're making that connection of he's supposed to be the best, so they're showing him being the best. So
He's a pilot. He's a flyer.
yeah, he's a flyer.
For
He's
those
also
of you who don't know that reference, you need to watch Solo.
yeah, good stuff. Any other things that you thought were really cool? Oh, we can't leave this podcast without mentioning the fact that Mace Windu uses his fist to punch out droids like it's knockout.
Oh, that's
He's like,
right. That was crazy. That was
he,
just insane.
he used the force to unscrew every bolt in the droid and then used all those bolts to like chuck them at a whole bunch of other droids to destroy them. Like, what in the world,
That was actually a scene I should have brought up in the tough love just because he was surrounded by those droids and not a single one even attempted to shoot at him. What were they doing? Blast him! Come on! Try!
But then Anakin couldn't cut his arm off in episode 3, Sarah. Jeez. Don't you know the story? It's plot armor.
Well, why couldn't he use the force to create a force shield around him or something? This show has no boundaries. Anything is possible.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I really liked basically um Mace Windu's knockout or Mace Windu's punch out episode here. Because he loses his lightsaber in like a sandstorm because this big uh ship it punches the ground with like this big machine and it makes like a big shock wave in the dirt and sand. And when he first encounters it, he doesn't know how to adapt to it. So he gets like thrown back and his lightsaber goes missing. And so he has to rely on his fists and the force to survive. So we get all these interesting montage things of him ripping droids apart with just those two things. And then eventually, when the thing does another punch to the ground, he sees a little thing glimmering in the sandstorm, and it's his lightsaber, and so he gets it back.
Yeah, I
Not
remember seeing him go all wide-eyed because he saw his lightsaber. I'm like, oh, don't go wide-eyed. That hurts in sandstorms. All the
yeah,
sand in your eyes.
yeah, that is kind of funny.
Cringe.
He also, after he deals with the droids and stuff, he like jumps a massive force jump to go see this kid that was watching the whole thing go down, gets a sip of water, and then does another massive jump to go back into the battle. I was like, what the heck? What kind of force powers are these?
I was his kid in the corner of the ring, man.
The thing is, Obi-Wan did it later. I don't know what the order was, just because the Mace Windu thing was a one-off. But there's a part where Obi-Wan is using a speeder bike to scale up a building, and then he launches himself off the speeder bike to combine the physics of the force and the speeder bike to launch him to the top of the building so he can land perfectly fine with his clone group. So
And he stuck that landing.
he did. They all have this like crazy maneuvers that they can pull off. All right, so that is our things that we really enjoyed about the volume one of the original Star Wars: The Clone Wars. When we come back, we're gonna wrap things up. Wrap things up. There we go, and just tie some loose ends together, and then talk about where we're going with volume two. So stick around. Have you ever wondered what Amazon coffins are and what they're full of? Well, we got you covered here on the channel. Check out our playlist of our Amazon coffin unboxings, where Sarah and I open up boxes that have Amazon returns, and we share with all of you what we get in each of those boxes. If you ever wanted to get into liquidation and want to know what types of things you can find, check us out. Now back to our show. Okay, we are back here with our final segment, talking about Star Wars: The Clone Wars, Volume 1 of the OG Clone Wars show. Sarah, you said you wanted to talk about something in the break.
Yeah, do you remember one of the segments was these two green ladies? One of them, it was kind of like a ceremony of her getting her lightsaber. The one who had the like brown cloak and brown hood headdress, what her name is?
Yeah, that's Master Luminara.
Okay. She is somebody who I actually remember having her toy as a kid, as like a little um maybe like a 6-inch minifigure, if you will. I feel like it was a little smaller than that, maybe 4 inches or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, I had a lot of various Star Wars character toys, most of them either women or Ewoks, as those were kind of the two toy types that I gravitated towards. Ewoks are cute, and women, with their cool weapons and stuff, that's kind of they were more fun to me, I guess. Luminara was one of them. What?
I think you also, like, when we first started dating and whatnot, and we were learning that each of us collected action figure stuff. I think another thing that you had brought up, at least with like wrestling figures, is that girl figures are less common to get, so they're more fun to purchase. Like they're valued more, and there's less of them, unfortunately.
I like their outfits better.
That works.
I thought they were more fun because they had better outfits.
I didn't know if it was oh, that's more rare, so that's why I want that one, kind of a thing.
Not that I'm necessarily aware of, but yes, we can publicly announce now, I suppose, that I did collect wrestling action figures. Thanks for
Yeah.
making that public.
There's
Um,
nothing to be ashamed. Hey, you can never be ashamed of collecting different toys and action figures. There's
no,
no shame and no judgment on this channel. If Tony
it's all good.
if Tony was on this podcast with us, he would be clapping like crazy because he is huge into wrestling.
No, it's all good. I just wasn't prepared to announce that today, that's all.
Oh,
I did and I do like my wrestling action figures. I still have several of them, probably a good 20-ish figure, 20 or 30 figures or so. I've tried to release some of these collections just because I've become a little bit of a hoarder with too many collections. But that is one of them that I am not letting go of, and I have kept them and I still have them, and they're not going anywhere because I like them. But yeah, in terms of Star Wars characters, a lot of mine are the Ewoks because they're my absolute favorite, or most of them are women of various characters. Some of them to be completely honest, didn't even know who they were. Luminara being one of them. So my question for you, Jeremy, is do you think that that toy was based off of this show, or is she in other Clone Wars shows that maybe I haven't seen yet and was more likely based off of those shows, or something completely different? What's kind of your take on where you think that character toy may have come from?
I want to say that she's in episode 2, just kind of like a background character. Because I think when they were doing like the montage of all the Jedi igniting their lightsabers in the arena, I think she was one of them. However, as because I have not seen this toy that you had or have, so if it was from this show, it would look like her 2D animated character. Whereas if it was from the movie, it would look more live action, like an actual person. It wouldn't look cartoony, so to speak.
Okay. It's probably from the movie then, because I don't remember her looking. It's hard to say for a green figured lady that's only like this big, but it's I don't remember her, let's say, like having hard jaw lines or something like this cartoon style, where their faces are more boxy than normal. I think her face shape is more of a normal face shape. So I'm gonna guess that she's from the movies, but that's interesting. So thank you for kind of clearing up where this character has been seen.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up to see if there was a figure of her from this show, but I'm not getting a lot of luck. There was a figure of her for Star Wars Episode 2, though. And my guess, do you remember if her robe was like really flushed out or if her lightsaber had a deflecting uh action to it, like where there was a blaster bolt that looked like it was hitting the lightsaber?
I don't think so for that. I believe I remember her having a full-on robe. Whether it was plastic or cloth, I can't say for sure. Because I feel like some of my characters had the plastic ones and some of them had the cloth ones, and which one she had in particular, I can't remember.
It looks like there was also one for the Revenge of the Sith line of figures, and also she was a figure for the current Clone Wars show. So it could be one of many things, really. Um, so I don't know 100% sure because I haven't seen the figure myself, but my guess is it was a live action figure. Um,
Gotcha. Well, for me, it was kind of special seeing a character that I had a figure of as a kid growing up, where I didn't really know who she was. I just thought she looked cool. And, even if she was in Star Wars Episode 2, which I didn't see until I'd started dating Jeremy much later in life, um, if she is in there or when she is in there, I should say, I don't remember it being like a super long scene. Whereas with this, she had like a full ceremony segment, right? So that was kind of neat to see her actually doing something more than just, oh, there she is in the picture. Now she's gone.
yeah, she had her own uh one-off slash arc in the show. The duo, her and her apprentice, actually do have a decent amount of screen time in the other Clone Wars show. Even I think to the point where the apprentice goes a little AWOL, uh,
Ooh,
and Ahsoka is her friend. So yeah, they are explored a bit more in that show as well.
nice.
I think some wrap up comments I have are the the show is like before Disney bought Star Wars, this and the volume 2, which we'll talk about in a future podcast, these were basically our concrete on-screen versions of what happened between episode 2 and episode 3. And we got a lot of questions answered, and I'm sure we had some questions that we created from these shows as well. Just because we got new characters coming, but we also see different things um, being put into these shows that answer the major time jump between 2 and 3 that have to do with our heroes that we're used to watching, like Anakin and Obi-Wan. I know in Volume 2, there's quite a bit of things that happen. But I think ultimately what this one was trying to show, not only were they really great on the battlefield and up in space, but we also got that segment where Anakin was just trying to destroy Ventress and quite possibly tapping into the dark side a bit. So we kind of got a little more extra substance to this dude's going to go to the dark side sooner or later. And obviously, we end up seeing that in episode 3, but it's more and more character development, so to speak, for Anakin. There wasn't a whole lot for Obi-Wan aside from the fact that he is a general in the Clone Wars. We do see him in his general outfit as far as like a commanding general and not in general. And they do actually carry that over into the other Clone Wars as well, where he kind of wears clone armor while he's being the general. I think in the show that showed him wearing the helmet and he had some, uh plate, like chest plate stuff that was specific to him, as opposed to just wearing a clone's outfit, so to speak. But that does carry over into, like I said, the current show we have, which is considered canon. Um, Again, I don't think this one is technically canon anymore, just because of the couple of different things that do not line up. I think from what I heard, I think the way that Dooku and Ventress meet, I believe that was put in a book. So I think they're pulling different pieces that they liked about this show and making it canon, but saying that the whole thing is, I wouldn't bet money on that. Well, let me ask you this. Was there anything else you wanted to say about the show?
No, I think that wraps it up pretty good. It was crazy, but interesting. I liked it.
Good. I'm glad you liked it and it wasn't a major, downvote, so to speak. Where we're heading is eventually we're going to do volume 2, and volume 2 is actually a really, really cool piece. Not only because, it's very action packed like this one, but I feel like volume 2 really ramps it up with answering different questions that, after we watch episode 3 from the movies, it kind of gives you some answers to different things that were going on before the movie started. I don't want to talk about the things too detailed, because obviously we're going to talk about those when we get to the podcast. But the point is that this show, like I said, George Lucas had 2 years to fill in some gaps between episode 2 and episode 3, and this is what we got. And honestly, I think he was really effective with what he did. And unfortunately, Disney doesn't really, get any ideas or listen to George Lucas anymore. Dave Filoni, he might be talking to him a little bit. I heard he kind of consults with Lucas every now and then. But what I'm saying is, we can tell what kind of really cool quality this was. And I wish there was, just as much heart into something like this, into some of the current stuff, because we don't get this kind of action in our new shows. Probably because we get so much more time to flush out things. It doesn't have to be run and gun like this show is. But I don't know. That's the one TV show that we got from George Lucas. He was a little bit a part of the Clone Wars show that we have now that's separate from this. But anything outside of that Clone Wars show where he wasn't a part of it, I think there's a striking difference between the two. All right, so if you enjoyed this type of podcast, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way you are notified when the next Shoot the Sheev podcast is dropped. We have also been covering The Bad Batch and The Mandalorian as of late, so make sure to check out those videos as well. We've also been covering Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order with gameplay as we are heading towards Jedi Survivor. That is coming out very, very soon. And we want to be able to share our experience with all of you. So make sure to check back in with us around the time when that game comes out. If you like the video, drops a like, and then also drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on the Star Wars 2D animated Clone Wars show, which, again, pictures behind us is the version we're talking about. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.